Okay. So as I said, this training session is on DMPonline APIs, a very popular topic. We've held a training session on this topic before, and we've been asked to repeat it, and we will no doubt repeat it again. This session will last an hour. Half an hour will be a presentation by our developer, Glenys Jacob, followed by a Q&A session, also approximately lasting half an hour. You can ask your questions live, or you can post them in the chat. But first, I'm very excited to introduce you to our new DMPonline service manager, Andrea Davanzo. So Andrea, if you wouldn't mind saying a few words about yourself.
Yeah. Oh, hello everyone, and thank you for attending this training session. My name is Andrea Davanzo, and I am, as Diana said, the DMPonline service manager. I recently joined to the Digital Curation Center at the University of Edinburgh, and it's a privilege for me to introduce this training session, which I hope will be useful for all of you. We try to did our best to avoid making the presentation too geeky or touchy. So with the main objective to make accessible to the widest audience. As Diana said, there will be time for the end of the presentation if you wanted to ask a question related to the training session. So that is for me very short. So let me introduce Glenys Jacob, which is software developer for DMPonline, that she will now lead the training. So up to you, Glenys.
Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. I will share my screen and okay. Can you confirm if you can see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. All right, thank you. I will begin now. Okay, so good morning, everyone. And yes, I'm Glenys Jacob, and I'm one of the software developers for DMPonline. Let me see, is it not? Oh, okay. So this is the agenda for this morning, and these are the topics that we are going to cover in this presentation. So starting with, what is an API? Wait, hold on. Okay, hopefully you can see it now. So what is an API? Some of you might already be familiar with this topic. If you're not, then here's a description. And if you are, then please use it as a refresher. So API stands for Application Programming Interface, and APIs are used to send data between two systems. So you can retrieve data, send data, update, and so on. So in DMPonline, we have two different APIs. We call them version 0 and version 1. Still not working? Now it's working. Yeah. So for every API, there is at least one function, endpoint, and requirement. So functions are specific operations that an API can perform. So this is, for example, retrieving data, sending data, updating it, and etc. So endpoints are specific URLs through which an API can be accessed to perform those functions mentioned previously. We will see examples of endpoints before and during the demo, so I will explain more about endpoints later on. Requirements. So these are the necessary parameters or conditions needed to use the API. So parameters, for example, authentication keys, and conditions, for example, data formats. So to use the APIs in DMPonline, you will need an access token, and I will explain where you can find it and how to get one shortly. So in the next two slides, there are differences that are shown between the two APIs, version 0 and version 1. This slide shows the differences in the endpoints. So version 0 has, as you can see, plans, templates, guidance, departments, statistics, and version 1 has only plans, templates, and heartbeat. So just a quick definition of what the heartbeat endpoint does. It's used to check if the API is online. So currently we have this only for version 1. So you will have probably noticed that version 0 has more endpoints, and this is because the purpose of version 0 was to give the organizational administrators full access to the DMP. So all of these endpoints allow access to every part of the DMP. So you will have the full text of the DMP when you use version 0. Whereas with version 1, the version was created to move closer to the RDA DMP common standard. So this, when you use this version 1 API, it will only return the metadata of the plan and template. So as you can see in this table, there are requirements for version 0, which is the API access token. And for version 1, you will need one more extra requirement, which we refer to it as the authentication token. Again, I will explain what this is and how you can generate one in the following slides. So examples of endpoints are over here we have two, which one is retrieve all templates. So you can see how in the version 0 column, that's what the endpoint looks like. And in version 1, you can see what it will look like, the same endpoint looks like. And we have another example, which is retrieving a specific plan. So in this case, it's plan 123 or 123 to be more specific. So you can see how in version 0, the endpoint, we add the plan ID as a parameter in a specific way. And in version 1, it's done in a different way. So this just shows the differences between the endpoints of the two APIs. So just a reminder that for version 0, the same endpoint for plan 123 will return all the data of the plan, whereas for version 1, it will return only the metadata. So there is documentation available for both APIs on the DMP roadmap GitHub. And so DMP roadmap, if you are not familiar with this, we share the same source code. And so the documentation available there is the same that we have for version 0 and version 1, because we share the same code, especially for the APIs. So on to the demos. To use any of the two APIs in DMPonline, as I mentioned previously, you will need the API access token. So those of you who are org admins on the tool will have access to this automatically. And to find this API access token, you can it will be in your edit profile page. So I've taken a screenshot of what it will look like. But to find it, you have to click on your profile icon on the top right corner and edit profile. To check if you have API access, you will, if you see this tab which says API access, it means you have the right permissions for it. If you don't see it, it means you don't have it. And if you are an org admin and you don't see this, please let us know, and we'll find out why you're not able to see it. But otherwise, yes, that is your API access token. You can regenerate your token if needed. But for now, this is what you need to access the version 0. So in the next slide, in the following couple of slides, I have a few screenshots where I have recorded using version 0 and version 1. So first of all, to use version 0, you will need the API access token from the previous slide as shown. And you will need a terminal or a command prompt, depending on the machine that you use. So we are going to use curl commands to access this API. And we're going to retrieve a specific plan using API version 0. So you will need to enter your API access token in the place highlighted in the second line, and then the plan ID towards the end of the command. So I hope most of us are familiar with curl commands. If not, please let us know if you would maybe like a crash course later on a later date, and we can arrange that. But for now, I will proceed with this demo. So this is the curl command in my terminal, and this is the result that you will see. This is actually a screenshot of the end of the result. So this gave me the entire content of the plan. I could see all of the questions, the answers, and everything else that comes with it. So, so that was version 0. quite simple. And if I can add, you can also use the same 3 steps to access the other available endpoints. For example, you can retrieve templates, guidance, plans created after a certain date, and as you saw here, a specific plan with the plan ID. So there are many different ways that you can use this. And once again, the documentation has more examples of this, but it follows the same steps, so you can follow exactly what was shown here. So now we will move on to version 1. So once again, just a reminder that you will need your API access token for this as well. But however, you will need an additional token, and I will explain in the next few slides how you can generate that. So once you have your API access token, again, you will need your terminal or command prompt for this. So for the authentication token, this is the command, the curl command that you need to generate your authentication token. So you can enter your email here where it's highlighted, and the API access token in the second place where it's highlighted. And this token will be valid for 24 hours or until you generate a new one. So once you've entered your information, you can this just an example that this is
Glenys, there is a question on the chat which is quite interesting. That is, can you, if you go back on the previous slide for a second, so just to he's asking if the data that we needed to send stop no,
which slide?
too much. Can we go forward? Where there is the text of the request, not the screenshot, the
Yes. Text of the request here.
Yes, not this one. Can you move forward one more? Yeah, stop here. Yes, the request is if the data that we are sending on JSON, probably we needed to slow down a little bit for people can understand. Yes, the question is what was JSON, and the answer is yes, it's a JSON. If we see the parameter -d, and then there is this D is the data that we wanted to send, and it is open curly bracket, which is identify that we are sending a JSON object. So the answer is yes. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but it was quite important question.
No, that's okay. I'm glad you added that because yeah, I completely missed that. I think I sometimes take it for granted that all of this is a little familiar. So thank you for the question, and thanks, Andrea, for answering. So yes. So anyway, this is the command that we use to generate the token. And once again, this is the screenshot of how I generated it. And this is the same command in the terminal. And yes, so this is the result of the previous command. So if you can see right next to the access underscore token, this long line of characters is the newly generated authentication token. So you will need to make a note of this for the requests that you want to make following this generation. So right, so very similar to how we use version 0. I'm using the same example so that you can see the difference between retrieving a specific plan with version 0 and retrieving a specific plan with version 1. So the command is similar. The only difference is that instead of your API access token, you will have your authentication token, so the long line of characters placed here, and the plan ID, the specific plan ID that you would like to retrieve. So this is the GET request that I was hoping to show as an example. So this is the command in the terminal, and this is the result. So again, this is a screenshot of the end of the result, and this is once again just the it's the metadata because this is version 1. So you won't have all of the questions and the detailed answers in this API result. So yep, okay, so that's version 1. So again, hopefully quite simple and easy to follow and use. Now we will just go through a few use cases that we have on record from other universities. So the first one is from the University of Exeter. So Dr. Christopher Tibbs gave us an overview of how he uses Python scripts to generate usage statistics and a weekly email of a list of the plans that were created in the week. So we had this in a previous user group, and I believe this link will, well, I checked it, it's working, but please let us know if this link doesn't work. We will share it with you, and you will be able to check the previous user group and see how he explains how they use it. So the second one is Joachim Philipson from Stockholm University. So he also gave us an overview in a previous user group of how he uses the API to export the entire DMP for further processing. So some other general examples are you can use it to create a statistics dashboard. You can add more guidance based on template usage. And by that, I mean that if you notice that researchers are using a particular template more than another one, then you can add more guidance and support for the template that they're using more, or maybe look into why the other template isn't being used and maybe add guidance for that. So finally, another use case is transferring DMP metadata between systems. So I've given the example as RSpace here, and that's because DMPonline has recently integrated with RSpace. So now you can import your DMPs into your RSpace account, and that is something else that you can do with APIs, which is transfer data between two systems. So I realized as I was speaking, and forgive me, but I didn't add this into my presentation, but I feel the need to mention two more use cases, which is by Erasmus University. And I believe it was Todd Matsumoto who gave us a talk on how they use it in once again, in our previous user group. The link isn't here, but I will find it and edit the slide before sharing it. So that was a very interesting talk where he explained how they use the API for processing DMPs as well. And I think there's Mark Broyneil as well. I forgot the university, but I know that he uses the API a lot, and he's an avid user of the DMPonline API. So there are a lot of people who we know, and there are, I'm guessing, a lot more whom we don't know who use the API. So I would say if any of you are using the APIs, please feel free to share it with us or this community, because we would love to hear more about these use cases and see what we can do to improve our APIs. So yep, that's me. Thank you for patiently listening. And now it's time for questions. So I'll just stop sharing and
Yes, there was one question on the chat, Glenys. So thank you very much for the presentation. Was believe that is pretty much clear without too much technical or words inside. The question is, can we are the data exported just in JSON, or we can also have other formats like XML at the moment?
Right now, it's only JSON. But if, once again, we'd like to know more about how the APIs are being used, so that if it is important to have other formats, we can look into it. But for now, it's only JSON, yes.
Okay, any other questions?
I see in the chat. Thank you, Joachim. So he says that you can do it with free software like BaseX2, where you can convert JSON to XML. I believe Joachim's presentation from a previous user group did explain that as well. So I would suggest maybe watching that as well. But again, please let us know how you use the API so that we can.
Just to introduce it, we have also some plan for this year, and there are two plans that we were keen to work with. One is to make the system more accessible, and that we started that the implementation will start soon, just after Easter. And the second one that will be make the system also environmental friendly. So, which means that we are also going to work and try to make the system more performant in terms of also the environment. About this XML translation, I believe that is something that we can achieve also on our backend. So instead of to give you the duty to use external tool and software and make this complex translation, it probably will be quite much more easy from our side and to give you the format. So in this case, I will probably if you can send an email to our supports, and we can start to engage if there is necessary to work on this. It will be a pleasure for us. And let's see. Any DMP was. What I think that has missed the API is how. Yes, that is an interesting question. Let me move this in a bigger screen by Andrea. Yes, we can add this information, so you can see how many DMPs have. We are also working in a kind of dashboard, which is still in design. We have some wireframe that we're working at the moment that give you an idea about the statistics on your DMPs and framework and whatsoever. We don't have anything specific yet, but probably will be shared on the user group very soon. But yes, we can also export, for example, this information through the API about how many times, if any, DMP was requested feedback. I hope that I answer your question.
I see one more. I don't know if it's a question or just a message, but from Bogdan. It says, "This is really interesting. I would love to see it in action. For now, I struggle to understand how the APIs help in a way that running reports directly in DMPonline does not. Sorry, I am a beginner with APIs." And I can see Lara has responded saying, "I'm thinking of adding it to my customer relationship manager, pulling in data from Infonetica, Figshare, WorkDrive, HR system, and now DMPonline." I can't say that I fully understand that message. If anyone else does, Andrea, feel free to add something. If not, Bogdan.
Well, I'm trying to have a look at what is the question about the integration to this CRM.
Okay.
Okay, I see. I found the first from Bogdan. For I struggle to understand how the API help in this way. Okay, the scope, the main scope from an API is to take two different systems and try to exchange data from these different systems. And this is going to also to answer the question about the CRM that I saw before that Glenys mentioned to how to integrate. Let me give you an example. You want to know how many plans has been created in the last 6 hours. So you can pull the information from the API, parse this information. You can use pandas or Excel or any other technology you wanted to use, and you can do your own statistics, or you can import this information in other system. And I suppose that is going to answer the questions about this CRM integration. To integrated information, like for example we did on RSpace, is something that is doable from our perspective, but this requires that we needed to know how the other system works and what are the opportunity in order to make this communication between the systems. And they needed to know what are the information that we can share with other systems. We needed to remember that there are some information that can be shared and do the GDPR, and other information cannot be shared. So we need also to have a look about the security, data security for the information. And I'm trying to find, I'm not able to find the question because the chat is keep moving forwards. And sorry, Glenys, can you repeat what is the question about the CRM integration?
So that's the thing. I don't know if it's a question, but but this is the message. So it says, for now, I struggle to understand how the APIs help in a way that running reports directly in DMPonline does not.
Yes. There may be some metrics that the DMPonline as a tool is not covering. And as, for example, you are interested, I made an example, let me know how many open questions we still have inside the system, or how many feedback I received today, or I don't know how many times a DMP has been downloaded from what country. I mean, there are some information that are inside of the system that are not visible from the DMPonline, but you can do your own statistics by integrate other data that you collect from other API, for example, and you can create better reporting, which is more like business intelligence, if that may answer the question.
Andrea, actually, that answer really helped. Just knowing that there's more information in DMPonline that we can't run a report on, that was really really useful. Because so far I've just gone by what we can check in users and plans to run reports and create our own statistics from that. So I will explore this.
Yes, if you have something to share, by the way, and this is an invite for all the people inside this meeting. If you have something to share about idea what you want from a statistics point of view, I know that there was already shared something before I joined on the DMPonline, and which we really wanted to start just after Easter. But if there is any specific statistic that you are more interested, we are more than happy to add inside the DMPonline, and let me explain why. If we are able to give you the information in a better way, so the platform is going to move in another direction, but I will maybe explain you in a different session. You can retrieve the information without do all these complications. So call the API, retrieve the information, do another analysis, and maybe involve other 5 or 6 tools. That will be something that you already have inside the platform. So this is something that if you wanted to add some statistics on this direction, we're more than happy to share, and we will work on this. Yes, Bogdan? I see you. You're muted.
Thank you. One thing that comes to mind when you described that was I'm quite interested to see if I can find out or report how many DMPs at our institution discuss, for instance, personal data or special category data or anything like that. Is there any way to use the API in such a way? And would it have to be specific to a particular template, or can I run such a query across all the templates used within our institution?
I believe, well, Glenys, so do you have an answer for
Yes, actually,
this?
I was gonna ask, could you repeat the question? Because I think I caught the last bit of it. I understood the last bit of it, but could you just repeat that? Sorry.
So let's say now we have 300 data management plans a month written within the institution. we don't look at them all
Mhm.
unless someone asks for feedback.
Yeah.
But we might be interested to report to our information governance team, for instance, how many projects work with special category data, for instance.
Mm.
Is there any way to find out how many of those data management plans have such data? And can it be done across all templates rather than focusing on one template?
Yes, yes, you can, because so for both V1 and V0, would you be interested in the detailed text or just the metadata of the DMPs?
Both, possibly.
Okay, because you can do that. The full text, you will be able to retrieve that with version 0 and the metadata with version 1. So you can retrieve all the plans based on, let's say, a specific attribute, or if, for example, plans created by a certain template. So you can retrieve that by giving the template ID as well. So that is definitely possible, yes.
Thank you so much. Is there any chance to explore this further with a bit of guidance from someone outside of this meeting?
Yes, please
Yes.
email, yeah, the DMP online help desk, and we'll be happy to do that. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Lara?
Thanks. I just wanted to comment on Bogdan's question. I've never done it, but the way I would do it is with R. So I'd use the DMP Online API to pull all the full text into R, and you use a text analysis tool to look for special characteristics or something like that. Set it up to search for certain keywords, and then pull that into a report so that you can report to information governance. So that's how I would do it. There's an extra step, I suppose, when it comes to the analysis of the text. But just having all the information being pulled easily into a system that can run that textual analysis will be such a great help. So great idea, Bogdan. Thanks.
That's a good point. I think we have in the
Thanks,
past.
Lara.
Yeah, well, we can even okay. Let me explain what is this dashboard project. What we are going to do is you can do through the API, but the dashboard project is this information will be available through the DMP online. So you can log in and you can ask, tell me how many plans there are using this template and whatsoever, and you will have your statistic. We are also working on this direction. So also to make the tool much more useful and giving you the information that you need without asking you to do the API will be still open, so it's a nice process. So that is more free. For example, the idea from Lara to use this text processing after, which is absolutely okay. But we are working also to have this dashboard. So you enter on the DMP Online, you can ask the question, and you have the result, which will be more sustainable in terms of environment, because you don't need to process megabytes of data through the network, and you still have on your browser quite immediately.
There is a question in the chat from Gemma Marston. Can you use the API with customized templates? Glenys has already answered partially to that, but it would be good to hear the answer.
Yes, of course. So as I just sent the last message now, so a customized template is just another template in the DMP Online database. So yes, you can definitely use it just as with any other template. Yep.
Any other questions about API usage?
Can API be used, I presume, for different roles that are not admins? Question by Andres Ramos.
Currently, no, because you will need the permission to be able to access the API. So if you are interested, though, I would still encourage you to reach out either to, if you're not already an organizational administrator, then to your university's org admin or to the help desk, and we'll.
Well, in this case, I would like to ask the reason why a normal user should have access to the API. If maybe Andres, you can say or type on the chat. I'd like to understand why the question. Is there any specific case?
Yeah, it's also depending on the different roles inside the institutes. So, for example, we have central data stewards, but we also can have specific data managers inside faculties or departments, and maybe they want to have direct access to that information instead of asking the data stewards.
Okay. So technically, you want as a requirement probably a new role where a user can have access to the API independently from how it's configured at the moment in a DMPonline as a tool. Am I correct? I mean, because you have this different level of access on the system.
Yeah, exactly. It's because
well, it's something which I believe that is something that we can implement, which is probably a nice features to implement also, because I suppose with all the universities that are here at the moment and the institutions, you are not alone. Anyone maybe can just raise up if they have the same problem, or just say a reaction on the chat if it's interesting on the similar features.
Andrea, can I complete you there for a moment before people answer? When you are given administrative rights, there are tick boxes to what administrative rights you can have, and we can limit it to, for example, you can be an organizational administrator with just API rights, access to the API. So there are various ways.
Yeah, but this is a different role. They don't want an administrator level. They want a specific user as an. Is quite different from the question from Andres. They don't want administration level. Is a user that has specific role that even if it's not administrator can access to the API, but something that we can investigate probably quite easily. Anyone that have a similar request? You just understand. Someone is typing on the chat.
There's a question from Shannon. What is the best way to import the API schema collection into Postman?
Oh, sorry. I was actually typing an answer, but never mind. Yeah, so the question is, what is the best way to import the API schema or collection into Postman? So actually, I wanted to figure out how to use Postman for this demonstration, but unfortunately, I didn't have time. So that also means that I'm not very familiar with the tool, but it is definitely on the top of the list for me to learn. So as soon as I do, Shannon, please feel free to email the help desk, and I will get in touch with you once I have an answer for you. Thank you.
Yep. The way they get reports on personal data and on special interesting, but it's okay. That is an interesting question from Joachim. I'm not sure, Glenys, if you can have a look at the last note from Joachim Philipson from Stockholm University.
Get reports on personal data and no special categories. But this is only my default.
Joachim, perhaps you can speak. That would be great.
Oh yes, Joachim. Yes, feel free to speak.
Well, no, that was just a way of responding to an earlier demand. But of course, this is only for our own template, so we can't get the same answers across the board or the same notification, because as you know, in DMPonline, when you have a custom template, you can actually have conditions for special answers. and you can request a notification once you get a special answer.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how we use that. But so far, I guess it's the same for many universities that users don't make up their DMPs in one blow. So it may take months or even years before you get an answer to a specific question. So this is something that's rolling on continuously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have been in a meeting last week and with another company, and we are trying to shift from DMP as an idea like a piece of bureaucracy, and we are trying to work now all together to make this as a living document. It's more where people can contribute more actively and make the life of the researchers, but also for the institutions that are supporting the research, and data stewards, and also more aggregated and cohesive in a way that they can collaborate through the tool in a better way. This is why we are thinking to do try to also to work on these statistics panel, so a better dashboard where we can have a look, or like for example, just press a button and you can see, for example, that plans that are still waiting for a feedback, or feedback that is not partially. Also try to work on this direction and make this as DMP no longer as a tool, but a living document. This is the way that we are trying to work. This API is just a starting point, also a meeting for an occasion for us to share this new idea with the plan that we are working. So whenever you have questions or ideas, suggestion, feel free to write, send an email. Diana is not sleeping, is working 24 hours a day, sometimes even 26. Is very happy to, I mean, all the team is very happy to share. And we suppose as a team that many times we develop features that could be useful also to other institutions. So this is the direction that DMPonline is going.
I also want to add, because I can see Bogdan has added a comment and a question to it as well. So just thinking out loud, there are several ways to capture special categories or special questions in a template, because you could use the multiple choice question answer and use that to check when a plan has a specific answer, just thinking out loud. But I think you mentioned that you will get in touch, so we can talk about the different ways possibly to help you get there.
We can even add to add new features like something like tagging. So you can tag, for example, a plan, something like, oh, this is a special.
We do have a feature that
Speaking. I mean something like tagging, not marking, which is different from the features that we have at the moment. And then we can do some report. I mean, we are open to do very.
Right, because the feature that Martha worked on, one of our other developers, so she worked on the question identifiers features. I think we've mentioned it a few times before, but that is another way of, I don't know the difference between tagging and marking, Andrea. So
yeah, but this is yes, is related to a question and not to a plan.
Yes, so we have that. We've got a question identifier where you can add that, and you can retrieve that through the API as well. So that's specific to the questions in a template, each question, individual question.
Right, we still have 10 minutes, but we can even end it early if there are no questions.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Can I? Oh, sorry. I added a comment in the chat, and I see that there's support for it. Following Bogdan's earlier comment, I suggested that perhaps we can run an API training session or running some specific reports not necessarily just how the APIs work, but just running some useful reports, giving you examples of such reports.
Well, we can prepare if maybe is still Bogdan in the code? Yes. If we can even work all together, Bogdan. If you ask me, send an email that says exactly what's the report, and we can try to do an explanation of it, and we can share across all the team here. So with all of you, and we can do this more practical. More than happy to do.
That would be a pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. Maria, Aldo?
Yeah. Well,
Maria?
are you okay? Yes. Anyone that wants something like practical. I mean, we can even plan a meeting, and I'm happy to have a meeting with some of you. Okay, if you give me some question, we take down the questions, and we will work on ourselves. Okay, and we will share with all the people that are here. And yeah, I'm more than happy.
Maria, did you have any suggestions for a report? You may not want to talk, or put them in the chat if you have suggestions.
No, I thought it sounded like a good idea to have more specific questions to pull out data. I'm also very new to API, so this was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So okay. So it looks like that is only for us in Bogdan. So Bogdan, I'm going to have a look if we can maybe plan something, and then we will share with all the user group, and we can do something practical. I am interested. I believe it was Lara, for example. You're using R, so I suppose that you're using RStudio. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm using RStudio and trying to create dashboards with Shiny, which I think Shiny is also a Python library, so you could use it in Python as well.
And yeah, okay. If it's possible for you even to share, I mean, I'm not interested about the data, but what kind of dashboard that you wanted to create. That could be also helpful for us, and try to share again with across all the team, and try to make your life easy.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of improvements that there are now on our plate, which between Diana and all the Glenys and all the other developers, we're going to have a look, and statistics and how we present the data to the users is one of the main objective. So if I can ping information and pull information from all of you, that will be great for us, also because you will be the drivers for this change. So right, any other questions? Let me move the screen here so it looks like that I'm looking here. No. Okay, I believe that Diana, we can complete. We can close this session. Oops, something happened.
Oh, right. Thanks, Diana.
It's just a comment from me on the question identifiers features, which is very useful for running reports on statistics. And we held a training session, user group meeting on this, and there will be a video recording on it. Yeah, so when we next run information about a session on APIs and producing reports, perhaps we should revisit the question identifiers again, because the APIs work with them.
Sounds good. Yeah. And also probably find the difference between tagging and marking, as Andrea said.
Yeah, but also we can start to work on, for example, on the plan that Lara or it's working, or Bogdan. See if we can create something that is more practical, that's not theoretical. I mean, presentation today, I believe that we meet the target, at least that has not been too much teachy or geeky. And we try to use a very simple language. I try to simplify as soon as possible. The next one probably will be much more specific on the target. Okay, so believe that we can stop the recording.